Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Wow, Love Light Inspire, the podcast especially for women like you, by inspirational women. It is the go-to podcast that introduces you to women who are industry leaders, they're experts in their field, and they're from all around the world, and they're totally, truly inspirational. They're going to talk to you about all different topics and matters that mean the most to them. Their stories will be revealing. They'll be honest and they will be wonderful. And they're going to be fascinating too. And we hope that these inspirational women are going to talk to you on all different topics and matters that mean the most to them. Their stories will be revealing. There's going to be fascinating conversations, which will help you understand yourself, navigate life in general, and understand other people around you as we discuss all things women. I'm Lorraine Roberts, your host, and I'm a productivity strategist. I help business women find their direction. I help them lose procrastination and move on to live an amazing life. So if you need help getting motivated because you don't know what to do, then I'm your gal. You can find me on the Facebook group, Women of Love, Light and Inspiration Community. Come and join us, connect, get in touch with me there. And look, we post all sorts of different things daily. So there's always something interesting to see. Now, today we're speaking to Juliann Gumulak-Smith, and she knows everything about money, about investing, and how to make really great decisions about what you do with your money. So listen to the episode, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So please subscribe. Come back every Friday as we release new episodes, and please subscribe so you don't ever miss another episode. Leave us a review and share it with your friends and let everybody know about us. Or you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or you can go to the website, www.lovelightinspire.com. Hello, Juliann. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you so much for having me today.
Look, that's just my pleasure. Juliann, would you like to tell the audience what is your story and why are you such an expert in finance?
You know, I really have been a career changer throughout my life. And I kind of look back on it now and see it I use the Goldilocks method. You know, I first started off as a molecular biologist, did that for about 7 years. And, you know, doing that experience, I realized I wanted to have a greater impact on people and more person-to-person contacts. So, you know, working in the lab, yes, you know, I felt like I was contributing to society, but I felt like it was too many steps back from that. So around that same time, my husband got laid off from his job and my youngest child was just born. And I was kind of thrown into being a stay-at-home mom. So, you know, at the time, my salary wouldn't cover daycare. So I did that for a couple of years. And during that time, I came across a company called Invest Tools that taught about the stock market. And I started investing and running our own retirement accounts. And I kind of almost did it in the shadows. I kind of call myself a little closet stock trader because I never really talked about it much. It was something that my father and I did together. He's a certified public accountant. So, you know, we would talk about stocks every day. And, you know, it was our time to connect, as daughter to father. And, you know, I've done that since about 2010. And then fast forward to about 2012, I was in a minor car accident, you know, not an awful one, but enough life-changing that I learned that I really had to slow down.
Yes.
You know,
it's often what's
Right. So it was enough that I did a lot of personal development and really looked at about how do I want to live the rest of my life. So, you know, I was getting up middle age and you kind of have thoughts like that. And I went through life coach training with Martha Beck. And when I got done with that, you're kind of always looking for your niche, so I had coached people on career changes because that was something I was familiar with, going from a molecular biologist to a life coach. That's kind of a career shift. Yeah, so this is where the Goldilocks comes in again, that it felt good to be with the person-to-person contact, but it wasn't quite right. And then I had friends who were going through divorce, and we would, talk around the table or talk on the phone. And that's when I realized people didn't know what I knew about the stock market, about personal finance. And I was just shocked. I just honestly assumed everyone knew what I knew. And that's when I shifted my business. That's when I founded Investment Academy for Women. So every person can have a strong financial foundation and a resource to go to. And it's not rocket scientist. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just need to learn a new set of skills. And that's what I love teaching about is taking someone who really doesn't know a lot about personal finance or the stock market and teaching them the basics to get them going so they can have meaningful conversations with their families, their partners, whatever it might be. Because, in my case, financial advisors, have to be, find out how they get paid. In my case, I'm just teaching you. That's what I'm selling. It's the knowledge, yes. Not necessarily I'm selling a stock or a mutual fund or anything like that. I really emphasize that education. And I think as women, I hate to say it, I don't believe we are given that kind of foundation. I oftentimes will leave it to our partner to take care of it because, we're busy. You're just trying to survive through the day.
There's a lot there's a lot of mature age women out there who, if their husbands left them, wouldn't know even how to go to the bank and get stuff.
Right. And
it's amazing how many men take control of the finances and they look after everything, and the women have no clue.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where, if you go through a divorce, you're forced to look at it, forced to find out what's going on. So that's kind of, now I feel like I'm in my little just right zone now. My Goldilocks has found her place. So
exactly. Yeah. Because, some women, they just get given their housekeeping and they have to budget their housekeeping. And often they can't even budget that really well because they run out. So they just go back to the husband and say, can you give me some more?
Right.
And he does.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of looking, at another way of, covering the household expenses or. Or thinking more long-term.
Yes. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about that basic budgeting. You've got 5 steps.
Yeah. So I decided when I was thinking about what I wanted to pass along to people, I came up with 5 steps to build a strong financial foundation. So this is something, no matter where you are, you can start here. This is kind of like step 1. And, that way it doesn't feel so overwhelming and it's approachable and everyone can do it.
Yes. Yeah.
So the first step, the first step is know where your money is. So some people this doesn't apply to because they know exactly where their money is, but not everyone does.
No, and before you were actually saying that, the average American doesn't have more than $1,000 behind them every month. So an Australian, that would be 1,500 or wherever you are in the 750 euro behind you or pounds behind you or something. When you're equating it to the world, it's not much money to not have behind you. So if something came up, they really couldn't cover the expense, could they?
Right. Not at all. And the amount of stress that people go through, just not having that, a little bit of safety net that puts, you interact with the world very differently. Your relationships with your partner and your family is very different. It is actually a very unsettling, like an unrest state, very stressful. And when I was reading the Barefoot Investor, he said it, physically, it almost feels like torture when you don't have that little bit of savings. That is how your body feels under stress. Like that is like torture. So we don't want to go there.
No, if you pull your car engine up and you suddenly got a toothache in the same month, you're absolutely
right
up the creek, aren't you?
Right. So yeah, what I was saying, about half people in the United States don't have $1,000, or like you said, 1,500 Australian dollars. But the other part, so people get into the thought that's only for poor people, people who don't make a lot of money. Oh, that's just them. There was another company, they're called Lending Club. They recently did a survey, and they found a third of the people making 250,000 US dollars or more, they are living month to month. They have no money left over at the end of the month. So these are the 1%ers. Okay, these are the 1%ers making $250,000 a year, and they don't have even the $1,000 to cover an unexpected expense. And what I'm realizing too, with the state of inflation and everything, so the people that don't have any savings at all, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm just assuming those people are putting things on credit card, because inflation's about 8%, 9% in the United States from this past year. I think European countries are similar in numbers. So
I think we are too. Yes.
Yeah. So 10% more just on average. So some things are more, some things are less. That I can't imagine the amount of stress that would place, the 1%ers. I mean, if you're living month to month and you have nothing left over, that is, again, it affects your relationships and interactions with your own. Yeah.
Probably means that they're living in a massive house, but they've got mortgages beyond what they can normally do. They're driving incredible cars, so they look extremely successful, but at the end of the day, it's all on credit and it's all on loan.
Right. Yeah.
So you just can't look at somebody and make it a judgment, can you? Because you just
not at all. So these are the people on Facebook who have, the fancy trips and this and that.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, it must have been like 5 years ago. Somebody had written about, most millionaires drive Fords. So Fords in the United States are just a simple car, like a Ford truck.
Yes.
They're not, driving the Mercedes or the BMWs or anything like that. Yeah. Also, with getting back to know where your money is, I like people to do an activity it's called a sticky notes success, where like for like a week, anytime you have a thought of where your money is, you put it on a sticky note. And then when you feel like you've collected all your sticky notes, you then put them into a spreadsheet. So in the United States, oftentimes our retirement is linked to our employer. And if you change jobs, sometimes you leave your retirement funds there. Sometimes you take it with you. And people forget that they have money from their old job that they can roll over into new, like they have it a little bit scattered. So this is a way that they can kind of remember, oh, okay, I don't know where that retirement money went because, oh, I was working for this company, but I'm working here now. So, and just knowing, people get a little resistance to this as well, because you get caught up into they're almost afraid to actually know the information, the should have, could have kind of scenario. And what I like to tell people with that is that it is just information. It is not personal. It's just data. You need that information to go on. Yes, everyone can look back and say, I should have done this. I should have invested in Tesla, when it was an IPO, and, everyone can look back at that. But, where you are right now, just assessing where you are right now helps you with the future. So it's getting you more into an action mindset than just staying idle and just not even dealing with it.
Very true. Mm.
Yeah.
There must be an awful lot of lost super in America, because you would forget where you worked when you were 23.
Right. So as far as I could tell, Australia looks like you have like 10% of your wages go into a super fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's better than what we get in the United States. So it's kind of up to the employer how much they contribute. So yeah, so it's and again, money gets lost over time. It's like, unless you roll it over or something.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. Because we too tend to roll it into the next fund as we move along.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So what we had, because if you died at 50, you wouldn't know, your children wouldn't know where you worked when you were 20.
Exactly. And that's why doing the know where your money is, it is so helpful if you have a partner or for your family. This is something I don't know. My dad is getting older now, so he sits me down every few months and tells me, okay, this is this account and this is that account. But not everyone has that. If I passed away, my children would know where things were, just because I have a spreadsheet that I have in my fireproof safety deposit at our house. But they wouldn't know otherwise. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's really important point. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about credit card debt.
Oh, yes.
I guess, I was fortunate, when I was in grad school, I, lived off of $1,000, and I don't know, I was raised not to like have credit card debt. I think it's a little bit more accessible now, and you can get it more when you're more younger. When I went off to college, my dad basically, said, okay, you have this amount of money for this month, and if you have an emergency, you put it on the credit card. So that's always been like, credit cards were like emergency when I was growing up. So I never got really sucked into that, but that is not the case now. I mean, expenses are very different than it was. And so when, I'm sorry.
I think it's about 24% or something like that in Australia for the average credit card.
Yeah, so I read
down. So it's a massive amount. So
right. And
a lot of people don't pay it off at the end of each month.
No,
That's always
they
been
don't.
You know, the credit card comes in, it gets paid that month, and then you don't pay that 24%. But most people don't. So it accumulates.
Right. And with paying off credit card debt, so the interest rate that you were talking about, it's about 15 to 25% by us, depending on your credit rating.
Yeah.
And that is actually better than what the average return in the stock market is. So it keeps you in that cycle of debt, basically. I think of it as slavery in a sense, or a cycle of credit card debt. It's hard to get in front of. I mean, 25%, I mean, they are making good money off of you.
Absolutely.
They are
absolutely.
You're paying for their yachts, Yeah. And for addressing like how to get control of your credit card debt, lots of people talk about this. It's writing down all your debts and taking the one that is the smallest, and that's the one you first start paying off first. Okay, so the thinking with that is that, it's kind of like physics, once, okay, think of pushing a box across the floor. It's a little hard initially, but once it gets going, it keeps on going. So you're building this type of momentum. And that's the thinking about paying off the smallest credit card debt first, is that you build up that momentum. Yeah.
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 Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and a lot of people have more than one credit card as well.
That is true. Yeah,
Mm.
that is true. So, so when you pay off this first one, you go on to the next one and the next one. And, some people call it a domino effect. I like to think of it as momentum. Another person thinks of it as like a snowball effect. You just kind of make it part of your daily or your monthly expense, and just continue to knock it, because you're paying yourself then, really are paying yourself, and the stress of not having that credit card debt. Again, you interact with the world differently when that is under control.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I must admit, one of my strategies also is, when I have been at times when I've been struggling financially, is my whole wage goes onto the credit card, and then I live on the credit card. So therefore, at least the whole wage is paid it off, and then I'm drawing back down again. But I need to keep paying it, the whole thing off every month, and then living on it to make it ends meet, sort of thing. That's been my strategy, but it's you've got to be disciplined to use that strategy, and a lot of people aren't disciplined.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think with again, with the inflation coming, being so high as it is, that I just can foresee people having larger and larger credit card debts. So yeah.
Yes, because the wages aren't keeping up with the rate of inflation, unfortunately.
They're not. Why is that? No. Another thing I like people to do is something that I call is a freedom fund. Okay, so it's basically having 3 to 6 months set aside. Okay, because again, it goes back to, if something comes up, if you have a major life transition. I mean, in this case, I call it a freedom fund because because I did a lot of career changing initially in the beginning. I never wanted to be in a job that I didn't like. And I never wanted my husband not to have the freedom to walk away from a job that wasn't quite right for him. So that's why I call it a freedom fund, because I wanted that freedom to say, okay, this is not serving me. This is, not quite right for me. Yeah. And, it ended up being really, really useful when my husband, when he got laid off. My youngest child was 6 months old. I had 2 young kids, and my husband was out of work, and this was in 2008. So think of financial crisis. Everyone was getting laid off. That was our life experience. But we did have that money set aside for such a situation. And sorry, my dog is coming down the stairs. Okay, Tyler. So that would have been a very different life transition if we didn't have those funds set aside for that. I mean, think of, a newborn at 6 months old having to, move across the country and start a new job, and, think it would have been a very different life experience.
Yes.
But, having that fund just, weathers that storm in a sense, so it's not a tidal wave. It's more like a little wave, a little bump in the road. That is not this huge life
So
changing events.
so what you need to put away is 6 months worth of rent,
Just
or house
your
payments,
right,
your groceries
right,
for 6 months, your
right.
electricity and your telephone and all of those normal, your
Right.
insurances for 6 months. So actually working out what it costs you to survive for 6 months and putting that in a separate account. And you've always got
not have and not easy access to it.
Yes.
Yes, just kind of like, this is, just, it's really, really just meant for emergencies, and I can see it being used if you wanted to, start your own business and you want a few months to, get something up and running, that, but it is not meant for you to like go to Tahiti or, big events like that. It's really meant.
I tell you what, that would have made, if people had have had that, it would have made the lockdowns during COVID and all of that time a lot easier for everyone. It would have just taken the whole stress off them, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I had not thought of that, but yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of people for 2 years haven't been able to work.
Right.
And that 2 years wages, even if you only had 6 months put aside, it could have, it would have just taken that buffer and the stress off.
Right. Again, not have it be a tidal wave, just a little wave, little life transition, not a huge one. Yes. Imagine the amount of stress that the shutdowns have placed on people with finances. So,
yeah, absolutely. Businesses lost, all sorts of stuff has happened. Yeah.
And our work environment is very different as well. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good hint and tip. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last one that I have is, contributing to your, I guess you would call it your super fun site. Not site, not a super fun site. That's a waste. Super fun fund, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, your retirement fund somehow.
Retirement fund, yes. So in the United States, we have, if it's associated with your employer, it's called a 401k plan. And it's something that's pre-taxed. And if, some companies match your contributions and some do not, on average, let's say if you contribute 3% of your wages to your retirement account, they will match it to 3%. And I always tell people, at least do the matching, at least do that amount. But more is much, much better. But if you can at least do that, because, we've had a pullback in the stock market since the beginning of the year. So we're talking maybe it's 20-25% in the S&P 500. So if you're still contributing, you can tell yourself during these pullbacks, I've doubled my money. So again, you're not having that stress. It's like, I'm still doubling my money because my employer is matching what I contribute. And then if you're self-employed, I always recommend doing like a Roth IRA, which is the taxes, you've already paid taxes on it. And any interest that you make in these accounts, when you take them out in retirement, they are tax-free. So you don't get taxed on that. And that's a really good tax savings. I always, say, talk with your financial advisor if you want to, with any advice about that, always check with them. But that is a really good deal, especially when you're self-employed, so you don't have that company matching your funds. You're kind of doing it on your own. That's a great way to start with your retirement.
And I must admit, because I've been mainly self-employed all of my life, I never paid myself super. Instead, what I did was, with my money, was I put it straight into the house. So I paid off our mortgage. That was how I did it, thinking that would be my great long-term strategy. But then when I got divorced and my husband got most of the house, I have no super.
I see.
He has his super, but I don't have any because
don't have
mine
that.
paid the house off, which he basically got.
I
So
see.
as older women, you'll find, and also being the house, the home keepers and
Mhm,
being at
mhm,
home, our
mhm.
super isn't great either. So for
Yeah.
younger women, honestly, my biggest tip and hint to younger women is pay as much as you can into your super, get your super up so you'll be right for when you're older, because when you get older and there's no super there, that's a stress on its own.
Mhm.
That's definitely a stressful, it's a
Mhm.
stressful outlook because you don't know
Mhm.
where you're going to find money when you
Mhm.
retire.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That goes back. Mhm. And then when you're deciding what kind of fund you want to put your money into, we have, I guess, what's called expense ratio. It's basically what kind of fees are they charging you to have a particular fund. So like mutual funds, sometimes in the United States, they run about 1%, and that is considered high. That's fairly high. And oftentimes, these mutual funds, yes, they are a mixture of different stocks that you can invest in, but oftentimes they don't beat the benchmark that they're trying to replicate. So let's say, you're trying to beat the S&P 500. Oftentimes these mutual funds are not doing that. And so you can just find a low expense ratio, like 0.1% instead of 1%.
Yes.
Index fund that,
Yes.
replicates the S&P 500, and that will save you so much money in just fees over the life of your retirement accounts, over the lifetime of that account.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you get a better return as well. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? Yeah.
Because you want to, you can get fancy later, if you want to do this and that, but if you're just starting out and you don't even know where to begin, in the United States, we have, index funds, and the S&P 500, all that is the 500 largest companies in the United States, and they're in different sectors. So there's some financial stocks, there's some technology stocks. So kind of a general mixture of different areas of the stock market. And so it's a nice diversified fund just to get started with. Sure, you can get fancy later. Oh, I want to go into energy, or I want to go into this or that. That's fine. But if you're just starting out and you're wondering what to do, that's a great place to start.
So how do you find these companies? How do you know where to find them?
So if you're like looking to see what companies are in the S&P 500, you can do a simple Google search, and they will list all the companies in the S&P 500. When you're like investing in like a mutual fund, they have to provide that information to you.
So how do you find the mutual funds, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Oh, I guess so. In my particular case, I use TD Ameritrade, and they have access to all the different companies you would want. So I've used the company Vanguard in the past, and they have some S&P 500 index funds. So I just would go to like the Vanguard website, and you can select ETF funds, and they'll have a whole list of what's available to you. And I just, since I trade them, I'm actively trading, I go through a brokerage company called TD Ameritrade. So, but you can get Vanguard accounts. Yeah.
So the mutual funds, you literally just do a Google search and say, where do I find a mutual fund?
Right. I mean, there's certain companies like Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. So there's, T. Rowe Price. So there are companies, and then you can buy them through either TD Ameritrade, or you can, which is a brokerage account, or you can just go through their company specifically.
How do I tell the difference between all of these different companies?
They basically do the same stuff, I guess. It's just preference. I will say, so when I talk about index funds are what's called a exchange traded fund. So you'll hear the term ETF. That is something you can trade within the day. So you can buy and sell it whenever you want. When you're in a mutual fund, you have to wait until the end of the close. Like whatever price that is at the end of the day is what you'll pay if you want to sell it. So there's a difference there. But yeah, I'm trying to think another, there's a nice website called ETF Screener that will list funds as well as a resource for that you can look into. Yeah. I'm trying to think another good resource. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, or you can always do a Google search, like, investment companies, and they'll have like the people that I mentioned, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Vanguard. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've always heard, and I've never managed to do, is a pay yourself first account. So if you're paid, if you earn $1,000 a week, you pay 10% of that into pay yourself first account, and that never gets touched. So then that can become an investment account. So there's $100 every week goes in. So at the end of 4 weeks, you've got $400.
Well, that is a great way to do like a longer term investment. That's wonderful. And I think many people are not doing that at all. So yeah. And with these exchange traded funds, they make it in a sense cheap enough that you can, buy a share at a time. So you don't have to spend, $2,000 to get a particular stock. You can spend, $40 to buy a share. So that makes it much more approachable and doable for a lot of people as well.
So every week you could spend your $100.
Yeah, you could put it into, that longer term investment account. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think there's a balance too of feeling, so that, we can save, but if you don't feel good about money, that also, like when I was a stay-at-home mom, we were, I was just so grateful to be home with the kids that I didn't spend anything on like hardly like clothes, everything was for the kids. But over time, I really, really started to resent that a bit. And how I got over that, because, you're a mom, you're not supposed to spend money on yourself, is that I love bath soaps, so fancy hand soaps. Yeah. That was the one little treat. Okay. They were about $3.50 a bottle. And that would bring me so much joy just to have the scent of that soap that, yes, we were saving and, all the stuff was going to the kids and everything, but I had at least, something that brought me joy and that I felt, like I could splurge on and feel like myself. And, because I was really caught in a rut and it made me depressed over time, not spending anything on myself. So, I hear you. Yeah. And that's why I say, it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to buy, whatever. Mine was a $3.50, hand soap that brought me so much joy. And I continue to do that today, because I remember, first being home with the kids, I was, oh, I can't afford that, we can't do that anymore. We have to save it. And, over time that really, really made me depressed. So
It does.
it's that mindset.
And you
Yeah.
do become resentful. The kids get everything and I get nothing.
Mhm.
And it does build up over time. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right. You're dead right. Actually, my passion is always having a nice handbag. Some people like shoes, I have handbags. And I would put them on lay-by and pay them off just slowly.
Mhm.
I don't think there is such a thing as lay-by anymore, but that's how I used to.
They still do it a little over in the United States. Yeah, layaway. Yeah. Mhm.
Yep, I used to put things on lay-by and just slowly pay them off, and I always had a nice handbag.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was my thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
everyone has something different. So that yeah, because you only live once.
Yep.
I'm not talking like crazy, trips to wherever, but something simple that brings you joy. And
yeah,
yeah.
because that's it. You need to have a balanced life. You do need to be able to go out, do things, but you just have to readjust things to suit the budget.
Right. Absolutely.
So you don't go skiing at Aspen. You you go to the local beach down the road.
Right.
And you go camping.
Yeah. But just as happy. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you're right. Yeah, money's an interesting topic in itself, isn't it?
Yes, I did not realize how much is passed down from us from our family and our parents.
Generational too.
Yeah, it just, I do a little bit, just I encourage people to kind of watch their thoughts around money. There was always, I know growing up, I heard again and again, we can't afford that. And I'd like to change that thinking to how can I afford that? Like, what can I do to, if there's something that I want, how do I, get that in my life instead of saying I can't afford it, because it's really, once you say that, that's it. So yeah, so there's that, there's, money doesn't grow on trees. And there's, there are oftentimes people who have accumulated a huge amount of wealth, but they like almost in a sense hoard it. Like, even though they have more money than most of the people in the world, they still have this mentality, I can't, give it away. It's mine. It's, I don't know. I guess our family, we're just average middle class, but we've always been generous. And it's just something that's how we were raised. But it's very, so I would have friends whose families, are much well off than we were, but they were like stingy.
Yeah.
Like to like unbearably stingy,
Yes. My mother was very much like that, but she grew up in the Depression with nothing. So therefore hoarded stuff and hoarded food. And I think it was because as a child, she always used to say, I was never allowed milk because milk was only for tea and coffee, and I didn't drink tea or coffee, so I was never allowed it. So food must have been fairly, fairly tight. And she talks about the Depression when, kids went to school without food. And she used to say, your father used to take 2 lunches to school, one to feed another child. So mum ordered food.
Wow.
And I must admit, my pantry is chock-a-block.
Yeah.
There isn't just me, and I have plenty that I could live for 6 months just out of my pantry.
Having you say that, it reminds me, my dad grew up in a very poor family. I think there was 8 children, and they always knew the status of the household based what was in the fridge and what was in the pantry. They knew
Yes.
how things were going just based on that. Yeah.
Yes.
And so he has lots in his pantry, lots in the refrigerator, just because. And then when the pandemic happened,
he didn't have to go out.
yeah, they didn't want to go out. So, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, my dad talks about that, how, even as a young child, they knew the status of the house just based on what was in the fridge. Now, I've also had family members talk about when they were growing up, when you were called to the table, you better come during that moment or else the food was gone. Like my kids, were kind of lax, maybe they'll come down a few minutes after things are ready, it's kind of casual, but in their household, like if you didn't come when they said dinner was ready, there wasn't going to be anything left for you to eat if you didn't come in that moment. So
that's
interesting life experience.
And when they were talking about food shortages during the pandemic, I must admit, I bought extra in case my girls and their families needed food. So that's a mindset that you've just put in my head that I realized that I did. I actually bought extra, so therefore I knew I could feed them if they needed it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's my mother. That's my mother.
Yeah. And and it's in, and mostly we're not even conscious of it. Like you seem like you just realize that now. Like, that's and that's why, our thoughts about money and how we live our life, it's often, comes from society, comes from our parents, or generational. It's just, a lot of it is life experience. And some of it, it is good, some of it is not. So I think once you become aware of those thoughts, it's kind of like, okay, does that thought serve me now? Okay, things are different now. Can I let go of that belief about, whatever it needs to be? But it's tough. It takes work. It's really recognizing those thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I also look at my family history coming to Australia in around the 1850s. They would have all come out here with no money, being absolutely dead broke, not knowing how they were going to make ends meet. And I wonder how much of that, and most of my ancestors, except for one family, they all went looking for gold. And that's why we're all in Victoria, because that's where the gold fields were. And they were all out fossicking for every piece of gold they could get to feed the family. And I wonder how much that has impacted my life and how much, the whole backstory has come back into me.
Right. I know my grandfather came over from Poland during the war, and their family was landowners back then, which was a big deal at the time. And with the war, they came over to the United States, and he worked for the railroad company. But he never wanted to risk not having a job. Like, it's a trauma of leaving his homeland and coming to the United States, like he never tried something else. He was, he had to, yes, they were poor, but it was a steady income and they were fine. I'm not gonna, think about a different career or, change jobs or anything, but that, and then that kind of, spilled over to my dad as well. Because I remember him, I have this, job and it has a good retirement. I'm not gonna, shake the boat. I'm just gonna stay here,
Yes.
Yeah, and then comes me that I'm kind of, wait, I want to find a job that's just right. I don't want to stay at the same job all the time. So that I bet he was having a heart attack. I was
Yeah.
changing jobs so much, but yeah, but it's interesting to see generational. But I think I married someone who's doesn't want to rock the boat, wants the stable job. I think my husband is very much like my dad. So
Funny about that, isn't it? How you
yeah.
attract. Yeah.
Yes. So I married that.
Yeah, you attracted certainty.
Wonderful husband, though, I will say.
Yes, actually, and that's a whole other thing, is you and your husband have to be aligned with money for it to actually work as well.
That is true. I can't tell you how many stories of people who, they don't talk about the money at all. It's kind of an uncomfortable conversation for some. And I can't tell, there's so many people who, either they're going through a divorce or they're getting near retirement, and they found out the money they thought was going to retirement actually went to addiction or something, and that they have no retirement savings. So I find that if you, let's say, talk about money like once a month, just kind of have an update on, okay, what's going on, any upcoming expenses, that sheds lights on the money situation and makes you and your partner more like a team.
Yes.
Instead of, so you have like a shared goal of, okay, we're not gonna, go to Aspen, we're gonna go camping instead, so you have that open communication. So 20 years down the road, where the money has been going, instead of, there's a lot of people who've just been completely blindsided by their partner and had no idea that they had some type of addiction or gambling addiction.
Yeah, that's very true.
Until reality kind of hits.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, it can be fun too. It can be a fun conversation. It doesn't have to be, but I find if there's resistance, it makes me curious. If a partner is not willing to talk about stuff, it makes me, it doesn't mean they're hiding money or something, but there's something there. Either it's a control thing or, I don't know. I think previous generation and even mine, I would be working and, everything kind of went into the joint account and nothing was ever set aside for myself. And then, let's say they decide to go buy a car out of that account, which you were not happy about, then you don't really have any money in a sense for yourself set aside.
Yeah. Yes. I do understand that, because I do remember in my marriage at times, I'd get the bank account up and then all of a sudden my ex would come along and say, right, now I'm buying a motorbike, or now I'm doing this. And it was like, now it's gone and I'm back to square one again. And it's like, I always felt frustrated because it was never anything for me, but it was, I'd done all this work and got it to where it was by going without.
Right.
And then he'd come along and it'd be gone again and I'd be back to square one.
And that's something I don't know how us being mothers, that somehow we don't think we're worthy of. I don't know. There's something generational about, mothers have been taught to go without. And, I do that myself.
Yep. My kids had all the activities that they needed to grow, but I had no activities for me. Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, when I had that minor car accident, that's when I realized, okay, I really need to stop how this is working, because this is not working for me anymore. I really see it as that was definitely a wake-up call for you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Put yourself first. Yeah, I now understand that, but it's a long way down the track before I actually understand it.
Right. And, a lot of people get pushback when they say, oh, I want to put myself first, but it actually benefits everyone. If you're happy, they are happy.
Absolutely.
And it kind of trickles down in a sense. I mean, and again, it doesn't have to be a huge, whatever it is that makes you feel like you, and not,
Yes.
not feel like drudgery every day, that you never get any, mine's the hand soap. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear it. So Juliann, if anyone wants to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me, I would say through my website. It's called the investmentacademyforwomen.com. And through this podcast, I decided to put a visual reminder, a PDF file of some of the things that we covered today that they can go there to get if they would like that.
Wonderful.
And
we'll
also,
have them in the show notes for everyone that they can click on the link.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. And then I am having an upcoming mini course called Mastering Your Money. And here it's kind of broken into like 3 weeks. And the first week we talk a lot about money mindset. So a little bit about what we talked about, generational things, getting a handle on our thoughts about money. And then the second part is a little bit more in depth with building your financial foundation. So I talk more about, okay, how much money goes to insurance and paying your mortgage. And so we cover some of what we talked about today, but more in depth about budgeting. I hate to call it budgeting because most people, it feels icky to them. But that's what that second week is about. And then the third week the third week is about introduction to the stock market. So if people are interested in learning the basics of the stock market, we go over some of the language. When you learn something new, there's always so much new language to learn that people just don't know how to talk about things with investing just because they don't know the language. And that's true of when you're learning anything new. There's a whole slew of vocabulary. So we go into vocabulary and then some additional things about the stock market. So that I am having in September.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds like a really good basic course for any woman, especially if they're thrust on their own and they don't know where to start. It's a great way. Or if they're just starting out in life too.
Yes. Yeah. And it's very, it's very approachable. I make it very approachable and easy, and it does not have to be complicated. Yeah, not at all.
No, because it's not complicated. We just complicate it.
Yeah, we can make it complicated, but
we can complicate everything. Well, thank you, Juliann. Thank you for speaking to us today.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Got a lot from what you've said, and I hope you've helped all of our listeners too with just how we do function with money. It's really quite a fascinating topic in a way.
It sure is.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Wow, Love, Light, Inspire, the podcast. And look, I know you got something from it. Something will have absolutely inspired you, because it certainly did me. I want to make a special thank you to Juliann for giving up her time and sharing her knowledge with us today. And wow, what an amazing woman she has. What incredible knowledge. Now, every Friday we release new episodes where we speak to a different inspirational woman. We have different topics and share their stories with you. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, please share it with your friends. Press the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And please leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that. We'd love to hear from you too. And we're open to hearing your takeaways from today's episode. So please get in touch with us. Leave us a message. Also, we want to know, do you know someone who also has an amazing story? Maybe it could be good for us to hear and share with our listeners. Or do you have an inspiring story that you think that others might like to listen to? Then maybe you or your friend could be our next guest. So please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. You can always find us on on the Love Light Inspire Facebook page or Instagram, or you can go to the website www.lovelighinspire.com. Today, I want to thank my producer, Nissa, who's put this all together for you. She's done an amazing job and it sounds fantastic. And please remember that the information spoken about today is general information only and not about you at all or your situation. So if you need help, if you need assistance or more information, please consult with an expert or get professional advice.